This is a nice color. Good morning, YouTube. What's up, guys? I hope you're safe and healthy and happy and doing okay. I have a shoe today that I've been anticipating for a long time. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I reviewed the first version of this shoe, and I liked it, but it wasn't my favorite shoe by any means. And I now have the second version, and I'm eager to see if they have made any changes to this shoe that could just improve it a bit. I mean, that is the idea, isn't it? But they don't always. And that shoe is the Hoka Carbon X 2. So we're gonna take this shoe out on a run today. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going by feel. If I don't feel great, I'm taking it easy. If I feel great, I'll pick up the pace. We're just doing what we're doing today, and I think that actually is a really good test for this shoe because it has a carbon plate, it has soft foam. It's supposed to make it easier to go faster. So we're gonna lace these up, we're gonna go for a run, and then we're gonna talk all about my first run impressions of the Carbon X2. Let's go. All right, I'm back from my run, and now it's time to talk all about the Hoka Carbon X 2. So I'll be honest with you, I think the Carbon X has a bit of an identity crisis. Let me put this down and explain. So we have the first version of the Carbon X here that came out in 2019. While this shoe is good, it didn't really live up to that sort of carbon fiber plated hype. So a couple months go by and Hoka says, well, that's not really our carbon fiber racer, our marathon shoe, that's coming. And that shoe debuted around the time of the Olympic marathon trials in February of 2020. And that is the Rocket X right here. So now Hoka has a marathon racer that they can really be proud of, that they can really showcase. And the Carbon X sort of fell to the wayside. So now here we are with the Carbon X2. And if you had asked me in the fall of 2019, if I thought that the Carbon X was like the marathon racer for Hoka, I would have said yes. And I think Hoka would have said yes too. But now we got the Rocket X, and I think that Hoka is sort of rebranding the Carbon X as your tempo day trainer that you can also race in, kind of like the Endorphin Speed from Saucony. After my first run in this shoe, it is evident to me that they absolutely did make some changes for the better in the second version. Take a seat, buckle up, we're gonna get to all that right now. Before we get started, I do wanna let you guys know that this shoe was sent to me by Running Warehouse for the purpose of review. However, they're not going to see this video before you. Hoka's not going to see this video before you. And all of my opinions are my own, whether you like them or you don't. Hopefully you do. Enough of all this. Let's start with the specs of the Carbon X2. So I don't have the exact stats on this shoe just yet, but I believe for a women's size 8, this shoe comes in at about 7.8-ish ounces. And that would make sense because for my size, 10.5 women's, this shoe came in at about 8.6 ounces. And from what I gather, this shoe has a 5mm drop with what I think is 30mm of stack in the heel and 25 in the forefoot for women. For men, it might be different. Again, unfortunately, I don't have the exact measurements. But one thing I do know is that this shoe is not true to size. Hoka actually sent over a 10 for me to try out, and Running Warehouse was like, do you want to try the 10? I know that you're usually a 10.5. And I said, yeah, let's give it a shot, because the Carbon X1 was a little bit funky in sizing for me too. And I think I could have afforded to go a half size down in that shoe. Sure enough, the same thing applies here. The 10 fits me perfectly. The upper of the Carbon X2 is a very minimal, breathable, and lightweight engineered mesh. It's similar to the Carbon X1's upper, but I think the mesh on the Carbon X2 is a little more structured and sophisticated. One big difference that I noticed about this upper was the heel counter. In the 2, it is much more structured than it is in the 1. So yeah, like I said, I think that this upper, while very similar to the 1, is better. The material used here is kind of sloppy. I could never really get a good lockdown fit. I mean, even just looking at it, you can see it like sinks, it drops. I don't know, I just never meshed well with this upper. But the story is different here. I'm able to get a nice locked in fit. And something I complained about in the first version was improved upon here, and that is the laces. These are still flat, but they've made them slightly thicker and a different material. In the 1, they're this like flimsy, I don't even know what you want to call it, but they literally came untied, which has happened to me with like 2 shoes. They've switched up the tongue in the 2. Now it is pretty flat with minimal cushioning. It was a little different before. Both are gusseted, and I gotta say, I'm not a huge fan of either of the tongues. I only have 1 run in this shoe so far, but I didn't have any issues with hot spots, blisters, irritation. I think Hoka did a really good job here improving on the issues that people might have had with the 1, while also not upsetting people who didn't have any problems with it. I'm really happy with it. As for the midsole of the Carbon X2, we got rid of Hoka's ProFly X that was in the 1, and now we have the same CMEVA material that is used in the Rocket X. But that's not all. Of course, there is a carbon fiber plate sandwiched in between the layers of midsole material. And while I don't know for sure, it certainly looks like it to me that there's a metarocker technology going on here, whether it's late stage or early stage, I'm not really sure. The first thing that your eye sort of looks at when you see the midsole of the Carbon X2 is the back, the booty. I think that's to help with stability, and I also think it might be to help with heel strikers a bit. If you are landing in this area, the shock will sort of split 2 ways instead of just being totally under your foot. Anyway, how does the ride of this compare to the ride of the first version? To me, there's no doubt about it. This midsole is definitely softer, more responsive, and just more enjoyable to run in. The Carbon X1 did have a very pronounced rocker and a propulsion feeling from that plate, but in terms of the foam, it was pretty firm and kind of felt dead at times. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't my favorite ride by any means. Here, the foam is kind of working with you a little bit. When my foot pressed down on that forefoot foam, I did feel it sink in a little bit, but came right back. I took this shoe out on a 5-mile run of like a tempo-ish pace for me. I think I clocked in at about 7:45 overall pace. And I never felt like I was fighting the midsole to stay at that pace. Smooth. Smooth. Like that one more time, smooth. Another thing that I did not experience in the 2 that I did experience in the 1 was a bottom heavy feeling. We do kind of have the same makeup here of a very thin upper, and most of the weight is going to be under your foot, but I think it's a little bit more evenly distributed because we've added a little more beef to the upper. It's not just like this flimsy piece of fabric and then all the weight. The plate isn't super aggressive, like you're not going to really notice it. It's there and you certainly feel like you're being rocked forward. But it's not uncomfortable, which I think is good because it gives you the ability to use this shoe for different things, which further proves my theory that maybe they're trying to make this shoe a little bit more of like your daily training tempo shoe. I know some of you will ask, so I came prepared. How does the ride of the Carbon X2 compare to the ride of the Rocket X? As you might imagine just by looking at them, this shoe is slightly softer, less aggressive. This is more of your lower to the ground, firmer, race day shoe. I would do tempo days in this and race in this. Moving on to the outsole of the Carbon X2, we have Rubberized EVA. This is pretty much the same as the first version with some minor changes to the design. You know, I did take this out on a dry day, but despite not having any rubber, the shoe did pretty well. Obviously, I'm not seeing any signs of wear yet, of course. I don't quite remember how the first version did, like on wet days, rainy days, so I am interested to see how this holds up in conditions like that. And while some people might look at this and be concerned that there's no rubber, I kind of like what they're doing here. Although I don't see why they couldn't just do what they did in the Rocket X, add a little bit of rubber in the forefoot and in the heel. But I'm not a shoe designer and I don't make the rules. The Hoka Carbon X2 will be available in January of 2021 for $180. And I think that is too much money. This is a great shoe, sure, but I don't understand why the Carbon X is gonna be the same amount of money as the Rocket X. And then you think about like the Saucony Endorphin Speed, which has a nylon plate, but that's $160. And honestly, I would maybe choose that shoe, or I would choose that shoe over this. Regardless of the price, Running Warehouse will have you covered in January of 2021. So once they are available, I will link them down below. Just keep in mind it is an affiliate link, but that doesn't mean much for you. It just helps out my channel so that I can compare all of these shoes for you. So basically, I really like this shoe. I think it is a great improvement over the first version. However, I'm kind of confused about its image. That being said, I do really enjoy the ride of it, and I am absolutely gonna take it to 50 miles. Well guys, that concludes my first run impressions of the Hoka Carbon X2. If you enjoyed this video, please like it down below and subscribe. And when you're done with all that, hit that notifications bell down below so you can find out every time I upload a new video. Hoka! I have some more videos for you guys next week, but in the meantime, get out there, get on the grind, and don't forget to run like heller. See you next time. Hello. Hello. Booba. Hello, girl. Hi, babies.